Welcome back, everybody. This is Coach Reese and Coach Loretta. We're here with Coach Lindsay Phenix. Did I pronounce that right first and foremost?
It's Phoenix, but it's totally cool. Yeah.
So we're here with Coach Lindsay Phenix, and we were just catching up about how we haven't talked in the past year. So I'm really excited to pick her brain about all of her expertise as a coach with OMR here. But welcome back to the show. This is Coffee with Coaches. We like to spread community and kindness through talking about our favorite sport, the greatest sport of all time, ultra running. So welcome, Coach Loretta. How are you two doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. So, Coach Lindsay, we're going to start right off the bat with your ultra sign-up page. I see that you've raced a ton, and you have an awesome ranking. I mean, it doesn't for those out there, ultra sign up, the scores can be, somewhat subjective, but I mean, you've raced 68 times, you have 21 trophies, you're at a 92%. Just by stats alone, you have a ton of experience, let alone the fact that, I mean, you've been racing for years and you've done a bunch of hot weather races. And I kind of just want to talk about your history with the sport and when you started and what got you into this, because I mean, if anybody wants to go look at your ultra sign up, you have an impressive resume.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I can get a little bit obsessive with that number, and I try not to. But especially out here, living in Los Angeles, we've just got these, amazing ultra runners out here. And every time you show up to a race, I'm like, I think I've got a good chance at, doing well. And then I'll get a 70-something%. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to remember there's a lot of really good ultra runners out here. And just the volume of people out here kind of makes it a little hard too. But that's not important. But I do like to kind of try and keep that score as best as I can and do my best, obviously. But I've been, running my whole life. I started out truly running kids fun runs with my dad and my cousins. And I've told this story before, but my dad would make little 2-mile races for us, probably 2 or 3 times a week at the local park to keep my cousins and myself entertained, because we were all, always around each other, and the adults would do their exercise at the park as well. And we would have the standings on the fridge every day or every time we raced. So there was no discrimination. So it was, I was one of the younger cousins. So we would be going up against, the 8-year-olds or the 10-year-olds. And it was all one heat. So that kind of started that competitive spirit early when I was just a true kid. And then, as I got older, I played all the sports in high school. My specialty was soccer. But I would always go run before school, after school with my dad. I just loved to run. And I truly I always felt so singled out and just kind of weird in high school because I just loved to run. And that was just my favorite thing to do on a Friday night with my dad, is just go log 10 miles. And I remember running 10 miles for the first time and being this is it. No one's ever ran 10 miles. We've done it. We've cracked this crazy code of what I considered ultra running, as a as a young kid. But yeah, I kind of just developed that way. And I ran my first marathon at 18 with my dad at the Houston Marathon. And I started running, 1 marathon a year, the Houston Marathon, for probably close to 8 years, 7 or 8 years. I was I guess this is just what people do. We run 1 marathon a year, we train for it, and that's about it. But I moved out to LA, and I immediately just was kind of overwhelmed with the amount of runners here. And I started meeting people, and I was like, maybe I can run more than 1 marathon a year. Maybe I can do 2 or 3. So I ran 4 my first year out here, and then I signed up for a 50-miler, and I just, it's been a snowball ever since, just one after next. And truly, usually around March here, there's a true good race every single weekend. So I find it hard to not do them. So in March, usually I'll run a marathon or 50K or 50-miler every weekend for a while, just because I can and because it's good training. But there's not a lack of races out here, which is why the ultra sign up. I mean, I feel like my ultra sign up number of races is very small compared to a lot of my friends out here. They've all got like hundreds and hundreds of races. So, but I love it. I love living in LA because the community here is just fantastic for road running to ultra running to track. It's just a really cool community here.
Nice. And Ultra Sign Up doesn't recognize how many marathons you've ran. I think it's probably nearing
Ultras, yeah.
I don't know. It's quite a few.
Yeah, I think I'm nearing 100. So hopefully I'll get it next year, but have a little cake and celebration.
And Ultra Sign Up also doesn't recognize like the breadth of running that you're doing. Like you're doing everything from like Brazos Bend 100 in Tennessee to Badwater 135, Angela's Crest, have that up on there too. Like those are
Right.
races. So I mean, like you definitely have to like, be in tune with like, hey, what's coming up and what type of workouts should I be running to have a good result, a good chance at increasing my ultra rankings.
Right. And I feel like I'm kind of dealing with that. It feels like it always falls that way where like I've got a really good race coming up where I feel like I can do well because it's fast and flat. And it's not my favorite thing to do, but I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So it's happening again right now. I'm in Tunnel Hill as well. And I'm like, okay, I've got a 17:33 there. I know I can crack, I know I can do well. But then I got into the Hurt 100 in January, which is like right soon after it. And Hurt 100 is like got so much climb and it's so technical and it's a completely different race and it's like extremely hard. So I'm like, okay, how do I balance the climbing versus the running fast and flat, and how do I get my body ready for both of those at the same time? Because in reality, I don't have time to train for Hurt 100 right after Tunnel Hill. Like I have to be training for both now. So I am doing both. Trying to get in a lot of fast and flat runs, but for sure still climbing as much as I possibly can. And thankfully I just ran Leadville, so that kind of transitioned a little bit into it, but I've got to like really pick up the climbing here soon.
That's awesome. And fun fact, I am going to be helping crew and pace Lindsay at Tunnel Hill this year. So
yes, I'm so excited.
For the listeners or viewers that aren't familiar with Hurt 100 and how incredibly technical it is probably the ball that like all other races should compare themselves when talking about technicality. If you look up some photos of the race, you'll see trails that have more roots than dirt. So it's absolutely incredible. Best of luck to you in that race. That's going to be super fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I've had friends do it, and I've had one of my very dear friends who DNF'd it like in the 90s. I think it was like mile 93, and obviously devastated her. And then she went back the following year and just finished it. But it's one of those where you're not guaranteed to finish. And so you're kind of just really blessed to be there to begin with, and you just got to set yourself up the best you possibly can. There's not a ton of running in it from what I understand. Like it's a lot of like fast hiking, and even on the downhills it's so technical that your miles are going to be very slow. So, and then add in the heat and the humidity, and it's fun.
Wonderful. And it looks like too the next event that you have coming up is Malibu Sunset Trail 22K. So again, just to go back to the breadth of like the distances that you're running, like does that kind of wrap into your philosophy of like, do I work on speed work? Do I work on just long, slow distance? Like when you're training for such a wide category of like racing season, like what are you thinking? Again, 22K versus 100-mile Tunnel Hill, fast and flat versus the
right. So for myself, and I think everyone that we train is a little bit differently, but for myself, I'm able to push a lot more if I am in a race. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Not to say that I can't go push on a run, I do it all the time, but I feel like I get so much more out of these like 22Ks, and kind of really use that as like testing gear. So I do like to race a lot because as long as I'm not, going too far and, racing 100 every weekend or something like that. But like a 22K is roughly like, it's a 14-mile race. And it's got like a gnarly 8-mile climb and then like, 4 or 5-mile descent. And I just love like really pushing myself. And I find that translates, like into Tunnel Hill as well, because if I can get in the best cardio shape possible, that's going to help me in Tunnel Hill. Because I remember the last time I ran Tunnel Hill, I mean, I was in the eights for a while, and if you're running in the eights in the cold, like for me, that was really stressful on like the cardio system. So for like the race that I'm going to do in Malibu, I feel like that'll, yes, be helpful for her just in the climbing aspect. I think you climb like 3,000 feet within 8 miles. But it'll also translate into Tunnel Hill, because I think no matter what, and from researching and just experimenting, the best cardio shape I can possibly be in will help me for Tunnel Hill. So that's kind of what I'm banking on here. And a lot of the fast flat miles, I know that you do, you're very good at that as well. For me, that seems to stress my body more than running like a trail. So I try to like really hone in on that and get really good at it, but then give my legs a little break and go climb a mountain, like go do something that kind of switches up the muscle groups. Because for me, like my hip will get a little tight, my back will start getting a little weird on these fast flat miles. And then again, we don't really have fast flat miles here, so I'm constantly doing like treadmill miles, and so I got to break it up sometimes. So it'll be a fun race with a couple of friends this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it's a true sunset run, so it starts at 5 p.m. and you're racing the clock to finish before sunset, which is gonna be fun.
So I love just that we met during Tunnel Hill. During Tunnel Hill, we competed against each other at Tunnel Hill. It was pretty cool, and kind of a funny story. And I've told this to Lindsay before, so I was racing Tunnel. I was back at, probably back in the pack quite a ways. And I slowly started moving up in places, and my husband and crew were Googling my competitors. And they Googled Lindsay, they found out about Lindsay, and they're like, oh, wow, she's passing her, anyway, so it was really cool. Really close at the finish as well, like maybe 10 minutes or so from each other.
Yeah.
And so from there, I think one of us reached out to each other, and we just, started connecting and have become friends. Even though she's in LA and I'm in Michigan, we communicate a lot, and she started coaching with us. And last year we were able to go to Brazos Bend, a race together, and I got to meet her dad, who's her best support crew. And so that was really cool. So that's what I love about ultra running, is that it's such a community that even though we might have been competing against each other, we can still be friends. And it's just really
fun. I absolutely love that part of it. I mean, there's truly nothing better than meeting the people that you're racing against, because none of us really know each other, going into it. Especially when you're traveling to these races. I did Angela's Crest out here, and a girl came up to me, and we'd finished like neck and neck, and we started talking, and she's like, I remember you from Tunnel Hill. And so that's also a thing. I think she might be doing it again this year, so I might see her out there. But it's like, you don't realize how small the community is until you start going to these big races in Leadville, and you meet people that from the East Coast. It's like we're all kind of in this little family, and we're all just little nomads traveling to these these races. I love it. It's the best.
And then something else you said, I think is really important to share is, and I think it's important to share for our coaches in general. We have a lot of experienced coaches that have really impressive resumes, but our coaches are also really good at working with all levels of people. And I mean, Lindsay, for example, does. She's working with people at the back of the pack, the middle of the pack, people podiuming, and anything in between. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because sometimes, I think when people are looking at our coaches, they're a little intimidated by that nice ultrasound sign up that, we're so proud of. So would you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love coaching everybody, but truly my favorite people have been the people that have been with me for a year, that we've taken from 10K now about to run their 100-miler. I find that just so cool, because we all know what that's like. We all know what that's like to be the beginner runner and not know how to get to the end. We don't know how to get to that goal, and it's extremely overwhelming if you've never been with a coach, or if you've never just put your foot into it. So I love coaching just all different types of people, but I find it something so special about sticking with someone long term and really guiding them from truly a 5 or 10K up to doing something that they never thought that they could possibly do. And then here we are. I've got a couple people running Hennepin. That'll be their first 100. And it's just incredibly exciting. But I've also got, people that have overcome like medical things that didn't think that they'd be able to do something, so big, that are running 50 miles and 100 Ks. And I've got some really cool people that I just started working with that I'm so excited to train them for a fast 10K or something that might be, down the line, they're, wanting to do like a 10K for St. Patrick's Day, that type of thing. And they might have run a 10K before, but they don't have the confidence to, do a PR, or don't know how to get that speed fine-tuned to make sure that they can get a PR. I've worked with people that were training for a hike on a vacation that just wanted to make sure that they could get through the hike in one piece, to go to, Peru or, wherever it is. And I think that that's really special too. Like, not racing isn't for everybody. When I was in high school, I was actually terrible anxiety when it was track and cross country. I couldn't do them. That race fear was like so real. And so I just didn't. I just, played the team sports where the pressure was less on me. So I get that, like, not everybody wants to ever race, and you don't ever have to. A lot of it's just finding someone to help you stay moving and to stay kind of in the space of taking care of yourself. And I think if we move our bodies, it kind of translates to the rest of our life. It makes every part of our life better. So I love training anyone, truly, from just a vacation that they want to be able to walk, or they want to walk at Disneyland, all the way up to, I've got some incredible athletes that are going to do so well at Hennepin, and I'm so excited to see what they do.
Do you want to shout them out?
Yeah, so I've got Levi, who's been with me for probably a year now, and we've done everything in between, and he's like the most passionate guy, and he leaves me like paragraph notes at a time of like the weather, what do you eat for breakfast, and like all of this stuff, and I love it. And then we've got Stephanie, and she's doing the Hennepin 50. She had a little injury, so we're getting her the 50, but she's got big goals of 100 coming up as well. And those two are doing Hennepin, so I'm so excited to see what they do. And they've been working so hard. And like, that's part of a coach, is you don't really realize how much people are going to give you. And I find it so cool. Like, you give people their workouts, and in your mind, you're like, okay, life gets in the way. Some people might not do 70% of them, and I'd still be happy. But these people show up every single day, and they get their workouts in, and they do it. And like, everyone has full-time jobs, their moms, their dads, and it's just really cool to see people giving their absolute best, truly every single day. And I'm sure you guys totally relate. Sometimes you have to tell people, we don't need to run 6 days this week. Like, we can back off a little bit. But then I think a lot of us coaches are also now seeing the run streakers because it's so popular. So I've got a few run streakers, and that's a whole different mindset, and I totally want to support their goals, even if it's not for me. So then it's like fine-tuning how to make someone, get rest even though they're doing a run streak. And it's just a fun little puzzle we all play in this coaching game.
Right. I love that. And I think this is a good time for me to bring up this post that I saw on Reddit that actually brought Lindsay her newest athlete. So I'm going to maybe make her feel a little uncomfortable because it's a really nice post. It said somebody was asking who her coach was, and this other person answers, and I don't know who these people are. Absolutely. When I went through Ornery Mule Coaching, the race entity that puts on Kettle Moraine 100, Hennepin 100, Midwest States. Coach Lindsay Phenix, a absolute monster, has ran Badwater multiple times, tons of 100s. She was on the Discovery Channel show, just all around great person. I was matched up to her based on my goals and background. We talked on the phone and clicked. I had just come off a 72-hour expedition race and was in bad shape. She helped me get back to fighting form. The company has an amazing customer service. It was $160 a month, a little bit of a sticker shock at the beginning, but now I think she's underpaid. Like, I can text her whenever and she will make corrections, change stuff, listen to me, bitch. It's honestly, every penny. If you Google them up, you can see available coaches. It's a pretty impressive stable. I believe the meet and greet is free. Any more questions, just ask. And I think that wraps up like how great Lindsay is. She is super, responsive. I can testify that myself as a person who is contacting her to connect her with coaches, super responsive and really excited every time I send an athlete her way. So so I think that that's really cool too. And then as a friend side, I mean, I see her coaching abilities because she supports me a lot when I'm struggling or getting ready for a race. And she's always there to kind of give me just some moral support and suggestions. And so I know that while I'm not coached by her, I know that, you have some really great coaching qualities.
That's really, really kind of that athlete to post that. And I just think it's endearing. But I want to say, like, as kind of touched on what you said after, like, I mean, we were texting the other day because I think when you sign up with Ornery Mule, you're really signing up with a coaching system. Like, yes, like you're working with me, but me and you constantly text back and forth about like, hey, I have an athlete that's, going through this issue or this issue. And I had someone that's dealing with some heart rate stuff. And you sent me like 20 messages of like resources and like excerpts from books. Like we talked about it. And, that's happened multiple times. Or like you messaged me the other day about like an incline on a treadmill. And like, I told you what I do and that kind of thing. So I think when you sign up with our coaching community, you're truly getting a community. Like I would have no issues if you didn't like, you always know the answer or like have good advice for me. But if I don't know something or you don't know something, I would reach out to Reese. I would reach out to anyone else in the group and they would have information as well. So I think that's what sets us apart as coaches, and our responsiveness is huge. Like I'm sure different coaches work different ways, but if you work with me, I mean, we live in 2023, like I'm always near my phone. I have no problem with my athletes texting me or writing in their notes like, hey, what do I do today? I don't know. Like I have a question about today, or like I have a little pull in my hamstring. Like, do I need to rest? And I will message you back like as quick as I possibly can, and just let you know like we can adapt. For me, a big part of coaching is being able to adapt. I mean, think of how many times us as athletes go out for a run and it feels terrible, and I don't want anyone to ever push through, an injury or anything like that. So I have athletes texting me all the time, and I'm sure you both do too, where it's like, hey, I'm mid-run, I'm really struggling, what do I do? Like, so we kind of work through that. So I think it's huge to have like a whole community of coaches at your fingertips.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, like I'm a huge person for team and collaboration. And I was thinking about the other day, we just had a great big team meeting and I just felt so full afterwards. I was like, this is so amazing to have so many people with different backgrounds and expertise on our team all together. It's just amazing to me. Of the same, of course, Reese and I do the same thing. I'm always reaching out, asking questions. It's just nice to be able to have a community because we can't possibly know every single thing, right? So being able to utilize each other just makes us a better coach and makes us able to support our athletes better, just having such a great team, I think. And so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it's truly invaluable. So I think that's, if anyone asks me what's the reason to sign up with Ornery Mule, I wouldn't say me. I would say all of us are incredible. Like, and even when I think we all do this too, is like when you send us an athlete and we have a consult, I will tell them like, I know you're going to be in perfect hands with anyone you choose. It's kind of just what works for you the best or who you kind of feel. But every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, oh, you're going to be fantastic with Reese. It's almost like you don't want to seem like you're pushing them onto other people, but it's like, oh my gosh, they're such an amazing coach. Like no matter who you go with, you're going to be just great. So you got to make the decision.
That's exactly how I feel. And I always tell people, I mean, you can't go wrong. I mean, we really look at our coaches and the team that we've built to make sure we have, great people that we're offering to athletes. And so I think you're completely right there. There was another piece I was going to say, an example, but I'm going to have to come back to it because I lost track of
Don't worry.
No, what's nice about like our consults is that like, it sounds like you take it this way too, Lindsay, is that like, it's more of like a bi-directional type of interview. It's like between the athlete as well as the athletes interviewing me. Cause like, I want to make sure like with my athletes that like, I like give energy and then I return, like I get an energy return because it just helps my coaching an athlete better and it's like, well, okay, like if I'm not getting that energy exchange here because of, like different expertises that other coaches have or whatever, then it's like we have that like system. And whether it's like other coaches or injury prevention or physical therapists, I think like over the past year, like we've really made like a robust team, just kind of like in all spheres.
We really have. And I mean, I was thinking about this the other day too, of like how we're all a community, but each coach has a way of doing things that really resonates with a specific athlete. I had a girl I just started training, and she's amazing. And she was a little hesitant because she's totally scared off by heart rate training, and her significant other has a different coach outside of Ornery Mule who only does heart rate training. And she's like, I just don't want to take it that seriously. She's like, I just want to get through and like have a good run. I don't want to check my watch all the time. And so I'm like, okay, cool. Like I have many different styles, so I could be a good fit for you. When, some other coaches, that might be the only way that they train, or that's the way that they want to train, which is totally great. And most people, or a lot of people, really love that way of training. But there's just so many different types of runners. And I think that you have to find that one that, that coach that really fits your bill. But I think Florida's in such an amazing job of like matching people with that, like knows our coaching styles enough to be like, okay, I think Lindsay would be a good fit for you. I think Reese would be a good fit for you. And then you get athletes. I have this one fantastic athlete I just started training a little bit ago. And we started that way. We started with like a pretty strict, like, this is your pace, this is your heart rate, type of thing. And he messaged me one day and he's like, I got to be honest, I'm checking my watch too much. I'm not having, a ton of fun on this run. I'm like, okay, we're not doing any of that. I'm going to give you a little bit of an effort guide, and then we're going to go from there. And he's having a blast. So I think it's just the ability to make it fun, because if it's not fun, nobody's going to stick with it. That's just kind of the reality. Like we're all doing this because we truly love to run and we all want to get better, but there's a lot of different ways to get better, and each coach does it in a different way. And I think that that's what's really amazing about the community as well.
For sure. And being adaptable and flexible are, skills that we've honed in as runners. So we can just apply that, I think. And I think that in my eyes makes a good coach that can be able to adapt to their athlete and meet their needs too. So.
Absolutely. I think that that's a huge, I don't know the percentage, but it's a huge part of this coaching thing, is like just being able to figure out what works and what doesn't, and picking up on it quickly. Like these people are paying a good amount of money to be guided and coached, and nobody wants to be miserable. So I think we just have to, as coaches, and I think we do a good job of, pivoting, and what works training for me doesn't work for somebody else. Like I'm a type of runner too that I don't like a super structured plan. I like to run exactly how I'm feeling, and kind of like I'll have a goal, but if things are turning a bit, like the other day I went out to run, and there's a joke, like I have the Nike Alpha Flies. They're not the super big stack, but it's like the smaller stack. And I love running with them on the road because they're truly like, they're a fast shoe. And I set out on the run with my friend, and I'm like, oh, I think it's going to be an easy day. And I took 2 steps and I was like, oh, these shoes. So I had like the fastest day ever. So that happens every once in a while. I'm like, oh, okay. So I want to always be kind of adaptable and, have a goal, but, not totally stifle someone if they're feeling like extra good that day and they just want to, have a great run.
So, we were coming on this show to talk about a little bit about heat strategies, cooling strategies for hot races, because you have raced Badwater and some other hot races. Together, Lindsay and I did Brazos Bend last year, and it was a very hot race. And so, but she made it through. But anyway, do you have some tips that you would want to share, or what you would share with your athletes if they were going into a hot race, how to approach that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of science behind how to specifically train for a hot race. And it's very difficult if you don't live in a hot climate and you've got to go to a hot race, because there's things that you're not even thinking about. It's the sweat factor. It's not just feeling hot. It's what is the actual physical response of your body. It's how much salt you're going to lose, how much, magnesium you're going to need to put in. So for myself, when I train for a hot race, I mean, sauna number one. If you can't do sauna, you've got to adapt. But sauna is the best way to train your body to sweat efficiently. And I think that's a huge part of it that people don't realize, is your body has to be efficient at sweating. And then you've got to learn how to replenish it. So for myself, sauna's number one. If you can't do sauna, I mean, I was training for Badwater when it was like 60, 70 degrees in Los Angeles, which is not ideal. So there's specific ways you can do, but I personally found it super helpful to wear the hoodie, wear all black, and just go hike as long as I could. I've done different research on if that actually helps the body respond better. It's questionable, but for me, having that feeling of just oppressive heat on you is priceless, because for someone that's very claustrophobic like myself, and you might not even realize that you're claustrophobic, you don't understand when you get in a really hot race how oppressive and claustrophobic it can be. So for me, just mimicking that feeling is also a really good strategy. So I'm all for the sweats and the hoodie, just to get that feeling of, wow, I feel hot and I can't escape it type of thing. Whether it makes you sweat more, that's, objective, but the true feeling of just being like, I can't breathe, I need to to relax and breathe through it, that's invaluable. But then you also have to really realize how does your body sweat and how much do you need to be replenishing it. For me, I don't feel like I'm that much of a sweater, but when you're in over 100-degree weather, I live off of the element salt packs. Like, I don't think I can overdo them. Like, I do it, on cold weather runs, but especially in hot weather, I'm constantly taking the salt packets. I don't do the salt pills because I don't feel like they hit your system as fast. I do the element, which is just, in, and it's immediate relief for me. So I think just training with your specific salt choice, training in the sauna is like invaluable. And then adapting. If you live in a cold weather climate and that's your option, is to wear sweats and go for a run, I think you've got to do it. I mean, there's not a whole lot of ways around it. But I think you also have to be realistic when you go to a hot weather place, if you live in a cold weather, and you've got to drop your pace down. Like, you're not going to finish it if you go out thinking you can run your same pace as what you've been training for. And then some races will surprise you. When we did Brazos Spin, like the weekend before that race was like in the 40s. I mean, it's in Texas in December, you don't know what you're going to get. But truly, the week before that was in the 40s. And then all of a sudden they had a heat wave come through. And it was like 90 degrees that day, over 90, but it was like started at 90. And it was like, it was so humid that day. Like, we have that picture of us running side by side, and there's just like a fog of humidity around us. And I think I puked for like 20 miles. And I think it was you that asked me, like, are you going to drop? I'm like, oh no, I'll be fine. I just got to puke this out for a little bit and keep going. But sometimes you just don't know, and you kind of have to be ready to adapt to these races at kind of a moment's notice. But if you've trained in a certain way that you can know that you can withstand that and you can regulate your body enough, you're going to get through it. But I think the biggest thing that you can do is mentally prep to feel that hot for that long. Sometimes that's just your best bet. Truly, when I was training for Badwater, it was like 70 degrees out here and I could not get hot enough. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. Like, how am I supposed to go to literally 120 degrees? So yeah, lots of hoodie runs, always wearing, thicker long sleeves. And thankfully I did have access to a sauna, and I sat in the sauna a long time. Now that's to say too, like, I have friends that have like a really nice barrel sauna that they let me use, but I have a like $150 Amazon like sauna thing that you sit in. And I feel like that's such a good investment for people if they don't have access to a sauna. Use that. Like, I sit in that for like 40 minutes and I'm just drenched. So there's ways you can adapt.
What about during races? What do you think about any ideas of things that you would do during a race to stay cool?
Yeah, so for Badwater specifically, you've got a huge advantage because for safety, with it being that hot, you have to have a crew next to you. They meet you like roughly like every 2 miles, and they put more ice on you. So for me, you'll always find me wearing arm sleeves no matter how hot it is. And that's just so I can stuff ice into my sleeves. So keeping your core cool is everything. So I'm a huge fan, and I hate that men don't have this option, I always, of course, have my sports bra on, and I shove ice down my sports bra, and it keeps it close to my chest, and it feels like that's the key. But then I'll put it down my sleeves. If you have calf sleeves on, if I've got shorts on, I put it in my pockets to where it kind of drips down my legs. But if you like, ice is key. Now, there's a lot of races that you don't have that luxury of having ice, at least not every 2 miles. But we've got a lot of good systems now with the bandanas that have the ice pocket in. So at an aid station, you can at least, get some ice, and hopefully it'll last you until the next aid station. Truly just keeping yourself covered. I'm not a hat person, but anytime I run in the heat, I'll have a hat on to just keep a little extra shade. Light colored clothing. Staying covered, I think, is huge that people don't realize. Like, I'm a minimal clothing wearer when I run, but if I'm going run in the heat, I'm usually in a long sleeve because that sun exposure on that skin is just gonna fry you from the inside out. So just staying covered as much as possible in a lightweight clothing, I think, is super helpful. And then you also run into the issue of chafing if you're putting too much liquid on you. So it's a very it's a very delicate balance, and kind of knowing yourself of what you can do and what won't work as well. But you've got to stay covered, ice if possible, and truly get in your salt, get in your magnesium, that type of thing. Liquid, your body can't cool itself if you're not giving it enough liquid as well.
Yeah, great advice.
I want to build off of that, like that heat training idea too. I do really like the idea of specificity with training, and we think about this like physically, like our workouts should build towards our ultimate like race goal, and be stepping stones towards that. But we can also think about specificity with heat too. So like, I think when you go out and you have like a bunch of layers on, and it's, let's say 75 degrees, but it's not too humid outside. When you have that like hoodie on, or those joggers on, you create this like micro environment that doesn't let your water evaporate. So you're kind of creating like a humid environment on your skin, which I think is pretty specific towards the Hurt 100, going to be like, super humid. And there's this idea of like, what type of heat is your race going to be, so like,
right.
Or going to be racing Badwater, you probably want that dry sauna, because dry heat feels like humid heat, so are you like, am I doing a wet sauna today? Am I doing a dry sauna today? Like, how does that factor into like your equation?
Yeah. So you're totally right. Like Badwater, that heat is just evaporating. Like even when your crew puts, ice on you or anything, it's gone. Like it's, that immediate evaporation, because the desert is just so dry and hot. So for that, truly the sauna is your best bet. That's like that was where I sat all the time. That's what I did. And then, again, if you don't have that sauna access, it does make it very difficult. So then you're going to go less specific, and you're going to go to that more humid training, because that's what you have to work with, So I think runners, especially for these big races, I mean, you're investing, X amount of money to get there, especially a race like Badwater, where it's so expensive to do. It's truly an investment. Why not get that gym membership to get that little extra sauna use, or, find a sauna somehow? Because if you're already going there, you've got to be able to commit to a little extra to get there. But I know even in COVID, when I was training for like the Keys 100, and didn't, like, all the gyms were shut down here, and I couldn't use the steam room or anything like that. That's the different heat. It's the humid heat. That's when I was just like, okay, all black, as many clothing layers as possible. And I didn't even really care if I ran. I just went and hiked and just like really worked up a sweat. So yeah, I think athletes also, need to hone in on that as well. And with our guidance, like, okay, I've got a cold weather race. How do I train for that specifically? I've got a hot weather race. I've got a humid race. And I think we do a good job of that. But for sure, dry heat, you've got to get in the sauna. And I don't think that there's many ways around that, to be honest, other than running in dry heat. And then for something like the Keys, or like Hurt 100, and like, I've had issues with my feet on and off, but I think I've hopefully cracked the code. My feet were great at Leadville, but you also have to realize what are your feet going to do in these different climates too? Like for a hot, humid race, like my feet turn into like raisins and they're just destroyed. So you have to train your feet to withstand things like that. It's just, there's all these different types of races, and how your body responds to them is going to be completely different than how it responds to a cold trail race. And you've got to train specifically for that. So I think that's also super valuable, having a coach, is like bringing up these points that our athletes might not even ever think about.
I think that's some really great advice. And for you, you are training for all different types of races. So here we have Tunnel Hill coming up in November, and you're not used to the cold. So I get excited about these races, but you're like, oh, the cold.
Yeah. And for the time that I ran Tunnel Hill, I had like the perfect race until mile 76, and I stopped for like a couple minutes to like, use the bathroom, and it was getting really cold then. And I tried to run, and that IT band just locked up, So with experience, I had to like run for like the next 20 miles. But I think the experience of being there and knowing what cold does to my IT band, I know I can't afford to slow down, to be honest. Like I can't afford to like let that have the time to lock up. But yeah, like cold training is completely different when you live in a warmer climate like Los Angeles as well. Like we kind of live in the perfect place, but at the same time, we don't have those extremes. I don't get really cold and I don't get really hot here. But thankfully, I have the mountains. I've been climbing a specific mountain a lot, and it gets cold there. So you just kind of have to adapt. But I think experience, and where having a coach comes into play, is I know what my body does in cold weather. So it's a good chance that another athlete might have this issue, your body locking up if you stop too long at a really cold weather race is not good. So I think you just have to stay moving. So I'm already thinking of ways like, okay, if my IT band does this, what can I do? That kind of thing. So we're gonna just stay moving and hope for the best on that one.
I think that, that is a huge point in having a coach, is the experience that we bring to you is priceless, right? Because we've been through it, we've done some of these things. And so we can help you work through those, or at least think about how you're going to problem solve any of those issues if you get to that point in the race. And I went into some of my first bigger races, coaching myself, and I learned so much by having a coach later, when I realized that I didn't really know what I was doing, so it has been helpful. And I love that. One of the things I love about coaching too is to being able to share those experiences with people so that they can be successful, and things that I wish I had known going in, so I think that that's something I really love to do, is like really help them through what they're going to be racing, and how they can be most successful getting to the finish line.
Right. And I think a lot of us coaches, like, we love to race, but at the same time, I think we're constantly taking in info of how to help our athletes when we're racing. Like, I'm always thinking of like, okay, my race went this way, what could I have done better? And then how can I apply that to my athletes? Like, how can we adapt their training if they've, got a similar situation coming up? Or how do I use my, not failure, but how do I use my, struggle in this race to kind of better another athlete's chance of having a really solid race? Because I mean, racing's fun, but nothing ever goes according to plan. So it's kind of like adapt at all times, fix the puzzle. Like, it's a constant like true test of how can I adapt. So I think our coaches that do like to race, I think we kind of have a little bit of an advantage, because we're constantly problem solving, and we can give that to our athletes as well without them having to truly go through it.
Right, absolutely.
This is kind of a sidebar too, but one thing that I really like to do with my athletes is like, and with myself is, like whether you have a good or a bad performance, you're pulling those takeaways. Like, it's really say like, oh yeah, like I reached my goal for my race and things couldn't have gone better. But like, let's still kind of like work back and be like, hey, were there like a couple things or a couple places where your stomach went bad, or like a couple blisters that kind of, or just like those small little nuggets. I think like us coaches are really good at like continually talking with people about, just to make sure that like, hey, yeah, you had a great result, but we can still take away like learning opportunities. So, sometimes like athletes, no matter how great their result is, like you know, like where were the low moments? Where were the high moments? Where did you drop food that you had to pick up? Like what didn't work with your gear? Like things like that. Cause it's like, yeah, great results, bad results. Like, let's just keep pulling away these takeaways from everyone. And it's cool because like the more people I personally coach, the more opportunities I have to get other people's experiences to like draw. There's so much that can happen to you in an ultra marathon that like I could race my entire life and still not have like the experience that X person did, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's, I mean, like so many things that can go not wrong, but just awry. Like, I mean, that you're just not expecting for. And I think it's really cool. Even if like the races where I've had like pretty much no issues, the takeaway is not there. I'm like, yeah, I feel really good about my time, but I can't tell you anything about it because it was good. But the races where I've had to struggle and problem solve, those are the most valuable to me as a coach because I'm like, okay, what could I have done here? I could have done better here. I should have addressed this blister early. I shouldn't have worn those shoes. I should, like little things that you're just like, okay, now I can take this away. But the races that, everything seemingly goes right, you're kind of looking for those little nuggets of information. And but I love a good race, but you do learn so much more when you're trying to problem solve and you're fighting your way through. And it's kind of fun, to be honest.
Right. And it is fun, like you said, Reese, to learn from our athletes. I learned so much from athletes, and also being there and crewing or pacing people, you just learn so much because you get to see people go through it and it's not you, you get to help kind of be that problem solver too. So I think that is really helpful. And I know a lot of our coaches, pace or crew people, and it's also, I know you have paced and crewed Badwater several times before you ran it and learned so much going into it.
Yeah, you see what works for other people. I mean, you're like, okay, well, if you're deep in a race and nothing's working, you're like, okay, I saw my athlete do this, like, let me try it. And you're like, oh, and it was funny at the key is like my feet, this past time, my feet were just a disaster and they swelled so bad I had to cut open my shoes. And that wasn't like something I just thought of. I've seen other people do this. Like I've seen people when I crewed the Vol State 500K for my friend, I saw people start the race with no tops on their shoes. So I'm like, I've seen this before. I know it can be done. So as soon as my feet like couldn't get inside my shoes, I was like, all right, get the scissors, we're cutting them open. And so like you find ways to like adapt in the most strange scenarios because you've seen it done or you've heard about it. Or, I think the ultra running community, we're constantly just learning from each other. I think a big hack that a lot of my athletes do now and something that I do is like applesauce packets. Like I've seen other people do it. I adapted to it. I think even Courtney DeWalter like makes her own like potato packets, like baby food. Like you see these like great people, you see these beginners that have these awesome ideas and you all kind of like collaborate like, okay, I've seen this person do this. Maybe it'll work for me. And a lot of times it does. And you're like, wow, I should have done that earlier. Like, I should have cut my shoes open at mile 10, to be honest.
So for people that want to know about how she looked with her shoes cut, I believe there's pictures on her Instagram page. What's your Instagram handle?
It's just my name, Lindsay Phenix.
Yeah, so if you want to check that out, I remember seeing the picture.
Yeah, that was one of the more tough. Like I've done the keys twice, and the first time I had a fantastic race, but you could tell my feet were on the verge. The second time, by mile 7, I had blisters that were gnarly. So I was like, okay, I know that this is just going to be a fight now. So how do we adapt?
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on. We had a great time talking with you today. Learned a ton about your background, about your coaching style, and what you do for heat and races that you have coming up. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with before we close?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to like, the years that I spent scared to try an ultra. I mean, I think I probably signed up for like 350 milers and never did it just because I was, intimidated. Get you a coach. It'll expedite the process. Just don't be afraid to start. We've all started from somewhere. Even a lot of our coaches I know haven't been running their whole life. They've, learned and figured out things. Don't be afraid to try. We're here to help you. None of us are going to judge you on where you're starting from. Like we're all just so excited. Don't look at our resumes are fun and they're cool, but we all love to coach anybody and everybody. As long as you've got the passion to run and you want to learn, we're all for it. So I think that that's my biggest thing. Like, come sign up. We love to help people.
That's an amazing way to wrap up the show. I totally agree with that. So thanks a lot for coming on, Lindsay. I'm super excited to see you soon at Tunnel Hill. I get to see Reese to a little party.
Yeah, Reese, you're gonna crush it. I'm so excited to see it.
Excited to be there and to see everybody. We only get to see each other, you know, a handful of times a year. So it's gonna be good to be with you. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you ladies.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Bye.